The clock showed just 53 minutes when the impossible happened. A green shirt slipped between Argentina's corner. For a second, the stadium fell silent. Then came the roar. Saudi Arabia 2. Argentina 1. No one had planned for this. Argentina had arrived in Qatar unbeaten in 36 consecutive matches. They were one game away from equaling the longest unbeaten run in international football. Argentine goals had been ruled out for offside, and everything still felt under control. Until 6 breathtaking minutes turned the tournament upside down. Suddenly, the favorites looked nervous. Every misplaced pass drew louder cheers from the Saudi fans. Every clearance was celebrated like a goal. With nearly 40 minutes still to play, the biggest question of the World Cup had completely changed. This was no longer about whether Argentina could win the trophy. It was about whether Messi's final World Cup was about to collapse before it had even begun. What followed became one of the greatest upsets football has ever seen, and a match that came closer than anyone remembers to destroying the story the world would celebrate just a few weeks later. The days before Argentina's opening match felt more like a celebration than a challenge. Every training session wearing sky blue and white and cruising through an unbeaten streak of 36 matches, this team looked different from previous Argentine sides. They weren't just talented, they looked complete. Inside the camp, confidence was everywhere. Manager Lionel Scaloni had built a squad that knew exactly how to suffer, defend, and win. Veterans and young stars moved with quiet belief, while Messi appeared more relaxed than at any previous World Cup. At 35 years old, this felt like his last and best chance to lift the one trophy missing from his career. Across the city, the mood around Saudi Arabia couldn't have been more different. Almost nobody gave them a realistic chance. Most predictions expected Argentina to win comfortably, with some even forecasting a heavy scoreline. Saudi Arabia had qualified on merit. Head coach Hervé Renard wasn't talking about damage control. He challenged his players to be, even if it meant taking enormous risks against the best player in the world. The plan sounded almost impossible. Within minutes of kickoff, it looked like it was already falling apart. Just 10 minutes after kickoff, everything looked exactly as the football world had predicted. A Saudi defender clipped Leandro Paredes inside the box during a set piece. After a VAR review, the referee pointed to the penalty spot. Lionel Messi stepped forward without hesitation, waited for the goalkeeper to commit, and calmly rolled the ball into the corner. Argentina's supporters erupted. Messi pointed toward the sky before jogging back to the halfway line. One goal up, the tournament favorites looked ready to put the game beyond reach. Then the chances kept coming. Messi raced through again, only to see the assistant's flag raised. Lautaro Martinez found the net moments later, offside. He celebrated a second time after another perfectly timed run, but once again the flag went up. 3 Argentine goals had been ruled out before halftime, each by the narrowest of margins. The frustration began to show. Argentine attackers glanced toward the linesman after every run. Scaloni paced the touchline, urging his players to stay patient. What looked like dominance on the scoreboard was starting to feel strangely uncomfortable on the pitch. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia refused to abandon its plan. Hervé Renard's defenders held an incredibly high line, stepping forward together with remarkable discipline. It was a dangerous gamble. One mistimed run could have ended the match, but every successful offside trap gave the underdogs another surge of belief. Argentina still led at halftime, but Saudi Arabia had survived the storm, and they were about to unleash one of the most unforgettable 6-minute spells in World Cup history. The second half had barely settled when Argentina's perfect script collapsed. Just 3 minutes after the restart, Saudi Arabia won the ball in midfield and attacked with purpose. Faraz Alburakan slipped a perfectly weighted pass between Argentina's defenders, finding Salah Al-Shehri racing into space. Nicolas Otamendi couldn't recover. Emiliano Martinez rushed off his line. Al-Shehri kept his composure. With one precise left-footed finish, he sent the ball across Martinez and into the far corner. 1-1. For the first time in the match, Argentina looked shaken. The Saudi supporters erupted, their noise echoing around Lusail Stadium, while the Argentine end fell into stunned silence. Before anyone in blue and white could regroup, the underdog struck again. 5 minutes later, Salem Al-Dawsari collected the ball near the edge of the penalty area, surrounded by defenders. He twisted away from one challenge, skipped past another, and suddenly created a yard of space. Then came the shot. The ball curled high beyond Martinez's reach and crashed into the top corner. For a split second, nobody moved. Then the stadium exploded. Al-Dawsari sprinted toward the corner flag with his arms outstretched as teammates chased him in disbelief. On the opposite side of the pitch, Messi stood motionless with his hands on his hips, staring at the scoreboard that now read, Saudi Arabia 2. Argentina 1. The greatest upset of the tournament was no longer a possibility. It was happening in real time. But Argentina still had more than 40 minutes to save their World Cup. The moment Saudi Arabia took the lead, the match became a siege. Argentina poured forward from every angle. Angel Di Maria whipped crosses into the box. Rodrigo de Paul searched for gaps that had disappeared. Messi dropped deeper, demanding the ball, trying to pull green shirts out of position. Every attack carried the weight of an entire nation's expectations. Saudi Arabia answered with something even more powerful than tactics: belief. Every clearance was met with raised fists. Every sliding tackle brought deafening cheers from the supporters behind the goal. The defensive line that had looked so risky in the first half now stood firm under relentless pressure. Then came the saves. Goalkeeper Mohamed Alouais threw himself at a low effort from Lautaro Martinez. Minutes later, he rushed off his line to smother another dangerous ball before Messi could reach it. As Argentina's attacks became more desperate, Alouais seemed to grow calmer, barking instructions and urging his teammates to hold their shape. The clock ticked past 90 minutes. 10 minutes of stoppage time appeared on the board. Argentina launched one final wave after another. Emiliano Martinez abandoned his own penalty area to join a late set piece. Every Saudi player was pinned inside the box, defending with anything they could: heads, knees, shoulders, and pure determination. Then, one final whistle. Saudi players collapsed onto the grass in tears. Others sprinted toward their fans, unable to believe what they had just achieved. Messi walked away slowly. His World Cup dream wasn't over. But for the first time, it felt painfully fragile. The celebrations inside the Saudi dressing room could be heard long after the stadium had emptied. Inside Argentina's dressing room, there was only silence. Players sat staring at the floor. Boots stayed on. No one rushed to speak. Just a few hours earlier, they had expected to begin their World Cup with a routine victory. Instead, they had become the biggest headline in football for all the wrong reasons. Outside, the reaction was immediate. Newspapers across the world called it one of the greatest upsets in World Cup history. Pundits questioned whether Argentina had underestimated their opponents. Fans who had arrived in Qatar dreaming of a championship suddenly began doing the math. The situation was brutally simple. Another defeat would almost certainly send Argentina home before the knockout stage. Their next opponent was Mexico, a team they had failed to beat in tense encounters before. One more bad night, and Lionel Messi's final World Cup could end in the group stage. The pressure became impossible to ignore. Training sessions grew quieter. Every pass, every tactical drill, every interview carried a different intensity. Lionel Scaloni urged his players to forget Saudi Arabia, but nobody could erase the image of that scoreboard. Saudi Arabia 2. Argentina 1. Messi understood the moment better than anyone. There were no more second chances. From this point forward, every match would be a final. And what Argentina did next would determine whether Saudi Arabia had merely shocked the tournament or completely destroyed the greatest World Cup story ever told. For days later, Argentina walked onto the pitch against Mexico carrying far more than 3 points on the line. Every misplaced pass brought nervous gasps from the crowd. Mexico defended with discipline, refusing to give Messi even a moment of space. As the minutes disappeared, the pressure grew heavier. A draw would leave Argentina's fate hanging by a thread. Then, in the 64th minute, Messi changed everything. Receiving the ball just outside the penalty area, he took one touch and drove a low shot into the bottom corner. He didn't celebrate wildly. Instead, he clenched his fists and screamed, a release of every ounce of pressure that had built since the Saudi defeat. The stadium erupted, and Argentina finally looked alive again. Enzo Fernandez sealed the victory with a stunning late goal, sending belief rushing back through the squad. A few days later, Argentina defeated Poland to top the group they had once looked destined to lose. From there, they survived Australia, outlasted the Netherlands in a penalty shootout, brushed aside Croatia, and lifted the World Cup after one of the greatest finals ever played against France. Months later, several Argentine players admitted that the loss to Saudi Arabia had forced them to reset. The unbeaten streak was gone. The fear of failure had already become reality. From that moment on, they played with a different edge, one built on urgency rather than expectation. In the end, Saudi Arabia never destroyed Argentina's World Cup. They nearly did. And that may have been exactly what Argentina needed to become champions. One match nearly erased Lionel Messi's greatest dream before it had truly begun. Do you think Saudi Arabia came closer than anyone remembers to ending Argentina's World Cup? Or was that shocking defeat the moment that forged a champion? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe for more football stories that go beyond the final score.